Ashley, the Orange Lady, and this is my friend, Robert Polanco.
Hey, I'm just Robert.
He does not want you to know his last name. I have worked in tech, nonprofit, and the public sector, and I'm a first-gen professional. So is this guy. And we've worked together before and are good friends, and think that maybe we could have some good insights together.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Robert said something like, hey, you want me to, debate you and chat shit? I was like, yeah.
Right. And this could be less of like a debate now, I guess, and just more like, Ashley's been doing the 1G thing for a minute now. And she's been helping a lot of kids for a really long time. Kids turning into young professionals. And it's super important, I guess, to just put out like real stories and like things that you're going to experience if you decide to go, specifically the corporate route is what we're talking about. Or if you're going to be in corporate settings where people are always like kind of cutthroat and competitive. So.
Yes, that. We decided that for our first podcast together, we would talk about toxic work environments and being managed out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's really fun, but it's a very realistic thing.
Right.
But before we kind of dig into that, I just say who you are, like West Coast.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so my name is Robert Polanco, like Ashley mentioned at the beginning. I'm from LA, grew up in South Central, and I ended up going to Dartmouth College, finished there in 4 years back in 2011, and kind of joined the nonprofit sector and leveled up through my first career, I say, because it was almost 10 years doing that.
Wow.
But
You're old.
we did that 10 years, right? Crazy. But yeah, so anyways, pretty much went through the ringer through like the corporate side of like the nonprofit world, and then always connecting with Ashley. I'm in real estate right now. I'm an asset manager for another local nonprofit that's doing a lot of big things in development, and just the different cultures of the two organizations and the different missions and the leadership is a whole nother combo that we could have.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I like to say that Robert only knows about toxic work environments because he worked for me in such a lovely, wonderful, fantastic environment that everything else was like red flag, red flag.
Yeah, red flag, red flag. But yeah, I think there's stories that need to be shared for like, one of our good friends, Janine, that used to work with us as well. We said, you don't know what you don't know. And that's super real. So as first gen folk, we usually don't know the experiences and don't have to deal with this growing up. So it can blindside you when you're just trying to do your best and working hard and like thinking that people are moving ethically in like most scenarios. So it's good to just drop some dimes for you guys. And even the story I'm gonna talk about is kind of like twofold because I learned it from another friend that went through it. And that's the only reason that I caught it and was able to protect myself legally when
I just want Robert to us to point out the fact that Robert's like making sure he has lots of friends, like not just me, lots of friends.
Yeah. It's because I want them all on the podcast of Ashley. So when I go back to them, I'm gonna be like, talk them up. Yo, my friend's doing this podcast. You got a coffee company? Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to know is what was the first sign that either it was toxic or that you were being managed out? Like, what did you wake up and go, oh shit?
Annual review was postponed.
Okay, just for you though?
Just for me. Everybody had annual reviews, and my annual review was pushed back from what would have been probably end of December, early January, pushed back to like March.
What was
April.
The excuse?
No excuse.
We just canceled the meeting.
Just postponing them, and it was weird because they did it for everybody else. You work at some places don't do annual reviews, whatever. Yep. It is what it is.
Context is everything. Because if Robert said everybody's review got pushed back, well, that's fine. But like if you see everyone getting their review and yours keeps getting pushed back.
And the complication was that like my metrics were good, but the big excuse was that I wasn't fitting the culture of the organization. And it was like, all right, like I disagree sometimes, but some folk in the like higher positions don't want to hear constructive criticism, or it could be potential like crushing their ego or whatever they got going on. So
Some people want to maintain the status quo.
Yeah.
And if you are a disruptor, which a lot of smart, creative people are, not disruptive in like a, I'm going to take it down, but like, I'm going to critique it and show us ways that we can be stronger. But some institutions don't respond well to that.
And it's wild because like the only reason I caught it was because the way I learned about it was because I ended up talking to one of my friends the previous summer, and he ended up getting managed out. But we were kind of trying to work through it and process
at the same organization.
At a different organization in LA. He's out in LA. He was working in a nonprofit. He was killing it, working in the schools. Parents loved him. He was starting to get like popular support type situation against, you know, maybe an older organization, whatever. But what ended up happening to him was he was assigned these tasks, these kind of like tasks that they're not metric. It's like they're kind of qualitative tasks that aren't objective and that they can use as an excuse to set up your management out, right? So they're going to tell you, you have to, I don't know, you're probably better. Maybe you've had to manage some folk out, but it's essentially, it's not telling you have to make 10 out of 10 sales for the quarter, or you have to do, you know, something quantifiable. It's essentially, it's up to their.
Yes. When you recognize that your goals are qualitative and not quantitative, if they went from, hey, you need to do 100 cold calls every month, to you need to have good customer satisfaction. Well, we don't have a customer satisfaction survey, so how do I know if I'm doing good? And they're like, well, we'll know. Like, if you're getting answers like that, or they're just like, we need to feel grow in your leadership. Okay, well, what defines me growing in my leadership? Well, you know, like
exactly.
It's like instead of like, hey, you need to increase by 50%. That's a really clear, like you either hit it or you didn't.
Right.
And
and that's a combo about like key performance indicators and like when you get hired, knowing how to set those up. And you know, and this specifically like in a corporate, I guess, environment. A lot of places don't.
But nonprofits too. A lot of nonprofits are like data driven. I put it in quotes because I think that most places say they're data driven, but really I call it they have data and they make decisions.
They get to make it up on the spot.
Yeah.
Which that goes to the biggest issue that I had, which was, you know, coming from communities like the ones that I come through, and then you work with students and you're serving them through a nonprofit. Kind of sometimes you get to look behind the curtain, and it's that feeling of like, oh, they're using these communities as guinea pigs as opposed to actually doing it because it's in their heart, you know?
Yeah.
Anyways, but that's another conversation.
That's a conversation about nonprofit system and
that's a whole nother
philanthropy. Okay, you noticed that your review got pushed back. What else did you then like notice?
So prior to that, multiple people were already being let go, right? I remember I took a trip to Thailand for like 30 days, and someone that had been hired within, I want to say like a month or two before I took that trip, they were gone by the time I got back.
Oh.
And it was a minority, and then somebody else who I had worked with people were quitting. The reason my spot was vacant was that somebody had quit and they needed like an emergency person. They kind of courted me. Came out, did my thing, but I think, so what I would say, just the culture was already, it was already established that they were letting people go a lot. You know, and those people who would like constantly like propose other ideas. And
it wasn't in like right now we know tech is like making these mass layoffs. It was more just like one-off. They weren't talking about it type of thing. It's just like next day Brian's gone.
Right. Yeah. It was wild. But I think what kind of set it off for me was the fact that going back to like where I knew what was going on, it was from my friend's experience. They gave them these, again, the qualitative kind of like objectives to meet. And then at the very end, like we would talk about it, we're like, yeah, you're killing it. You're doing a great job. Like we thought he had a real chance to overcome it, right?
That's one of the biggest mistakes that first gens make is that you get a write-up. That's what we'll call it. It's called, you know, a performance improvement plan, a write-up, whatever. And you actually take it serious and think that it is something that you are supposed to be able to meet and supposed to be able to achieve. It is actually the first indicator that you are gone soon. Like, it's typically not to actually help you improve.
Yeah,
it is
crazy.
typically to start documenting so they have a paper trail.
So you can't sue.
Yep. So,
yeah, it's crazy, y'all. So, yeah. So I knew because he went through like a 3-month write-up or like test period or whatever, evaluation period, and he hit all the marks. Like,
allegedly.
Right, through our estimation,
Right.
when he was telling me things, he was like, yeah, dude, it sounds like you're hitting the marks. And then like, they were like, yeah, no, like even though you increased these metrics, even though you did this, no, you're still not.
And that's the moving goalpost. It's like, oh, you thought you hit it, but actually it's here. Like,
right.
That's another, like, if it constantly changes because you keep meeting it, that's
right.
also another sign.
Right. So for mine, basically, the way they proposed it to me, they came to me and they were like, you have to read this many Harvard Business Review journals. You have to submit a report to the director of, I forget what she was doing at the time, some other director.
Wait.
To like a new minority director that they had just hired. They were like, you have to report to this minority director and give a report on all of the journals that you read, and she's gonna grade them.
What? No.
Yeah, it was wild.
So you had to, what, get A's? Or like, I don't understand.
Potentially, but when they did that.
What was the rationale? Because remember, none of this usually makes any sense.
Right.
But like, what was the rationale they came up with and why?
No rationale. And I didn't stop to think about the rationale because I was like, my mind was made up as well. So
yeah,
I was kind of like, I'm already checked out, but you know, you're not gonna basically try to bully me out or have this stupid like thing documented about how you try to make me jump hoops and do all these things to keep a position here. So I reached out to a lawyer friend and I was like, I told them everything and they were like, oh yeah, you would have a case. So they wrote a email for me, how to respond, and sent it to them and they came back with a severance package and it was like, okay.
Okay, so say you don't have a lawyer friend. like what, you know.
You better call legal aid.
Yeah. Like
at 1-800.
You know, how do you know if you have, like, how do you get that kind of negotiation support? Like, hey, I think they're managing me out. How can I?
You join the Squeeze.
I am not a lawyer. So that you can get connected to people like Robert who have connections to the legal.
I'll put you on as legal aid. But yeah, it's tough, right? Like if you don't know what you don't know.
No, you don't. And I guess the lesson too is like, just ask. Like you never know if it's going to be something. And even if it's not like to actually sue, it's to get it on record so that you do get a severance package and you're taking care of yourself. Right. Because we all know that they could have fired you and you got nothing with no notice. Yeah.
But you know, we live in a world where like, you know, branding and reputation and things of that nature. So
yes,
why would they want to have it documented that they did this to somebody like in legal paperwork, like it's not in their interest and you know, it's buyouts. So if you get managed out, make sure you turn it into a buyout. That's the gist of this.
Is that the technical,
story.
like it's called a buyout?
If you get managed out, get bought out. It's like sell out.
You heard it here first. If you get managed out, you get bought out. I mean, buy what? I don't know. Okay.
If you get managed out, make sure it's a buyout. That's the easy way to put it.
See, this is why you're here. To wrap this up, because we talked about identifying and kind of like being aware of it from the beginning. What's something, and not to be like toxic positivity, but like we carry these, like we learn from these things greatly. What is something now that you carry with you from that experience in any work environment?
For me specifically, I'm more reserved with my what feedback I put, so more strategic in terms of like, I'm like, all right, this is just a company. At the end of the day, like I got dreams outside of this. So it's like, this is a tool that fuels my other like entertainment in life or like what I really truly care about in life. So it's kind of like being like, all right, you know, nothing's always going to be perfect and gravy, but like I'm more reserved in like how much I'm pushing the envelope, but still trying to find ways to like put people on or like subtly like make sure things are like healthy practices at work, just trying to be a positive force as opposed to like kind of rebelling and just being so
like identifying everything and like trying to fix it all.
Yeah, like I'm in my lane. I still have to knock out my stuff. So I'm not gonna, you know. I'm more like zen about it. Like before you kind of like you're moving up and you're trying to come up and you're trying to make moves and you're trying to shake and stuff like that. You know, that has its role too. It serves its purpose. You help a lot of people and you do a lot of great things. But you know, you do mature and you kind of like zen out and you become more like a sensei, kind of like with some stuff.
I mean, when you've been burned, it actually helps you establish more healthy relationships with work going forward, because you're never going to pour yourself into it the way you did, because you're like, wait, I could literally pour myself into this and then you could just be like, deuces, bye. Like, so it actually is very helpful. You never want somebody to like go through losing a job or being bought out, but my goodness, it does help set boundaries.
Learn to set boundaries. Earlier rather than later.
So thanks for listening. Thanks for chatting and sharing your story. I know I always learn from you and appreciate it. So now you've got the juice. It's time to put it to use.
You got the juice now.
See you next week.